Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about the 5th week of Planetary Qualifiers as well as other major tournaments that have happened in the last weekend. So this video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. So the first thing we're gonna take a look at is obviously every single leader that won a PQ in this week 5. So as you can see, Vader 4 is going very strong here with 4 PQ wins in total, and then a relatively diverse amount of different leaders, some of the meta leaders. Biggest surprise here is no Anwan and no Sabine has won a PQ this weekend. We see Hantu and both Hantu and Cad Bane going strong. Hantu is just really powerful right now. It's a leader that I think a lot of people are kind of rediscovering in the light of this set 4. We were in a very heavy Talking Town meta back in set 3 and at the beginning of set 4, but since the Django ban, there's now only 2 decks that heavily runs Talking Town, and that's Cad Bane and Quinlan. And Quinlan and Quinlan's, they are really powerful deck, but they're not like on the forefront of the meta, which opens up Hantu. But then obviously the fact that Hantu is very popular has now a positive impact on Quinlan and Cad Bane. So you see now Quinlan and Cad Bane. So we are into sort of like kind of triangle between Hantu that kind of beats like a lot of the decks we've been seeing and really benefit heavily from Data Vault, beating those kind of aggro deck and Sabine, and then those kind of aggro decks who kind of do well into Quinlan and Cad Bane that we've been seeing, and then the Talking Town that kind of beats the Hantu. So not sure if this analysis is completely accurate because obviously it's a wild generalization. There's a lot of different lists, a different example, but it really seems that Hantu has been on the rise since the ban of Django, and because Hantu is really good, we're seeing Quinlan's and Cad Bane kind of making sort of a comeback. It's kind of like what I'm trying to say. So, and we also saw Boba Fett getting another PQ wins, and we get more into that as we take a look at the different list. As far as the overall decks that have made a top 8 in this week 5 of PQ, we see Quinlan being the most successful deck this month. So, as I said, there seems to be a Talking Town / anti-Talking Town kind of meta going on where that is kind of like going to come back. Qi'ra and Sabine still going strong. Vader 4 definitely has been very successful because if you look at the overall top 8, it's just pretty much average compared to the other tier decks, right at the middle of the tier 1 decks. And then he got himself like 4 PQ wins. So, and then the rest is just a very diverse field as we've been accustomed to see. I think we've seen Krennic here, which I think made a top 8 appearance. We also see Palpatine 3 also making an appearance as well. I don't think we've seen those decks doing a PQ top 8 in the previous weeks, so it's nice to see them being successful as well. And if you look at the overall PQ winners, Qi'ra still has a relatively head start, as a relatively comfortable lead, and Hantu is taking the 2nd position. And once again, very diverse amount of PQ winners. And then finally the overall set 4 PQ top 8, where you see basically Qi'ra and Sabine were neck to neck. Now it seems that Qi'ra has taken a little bit more of a lead, but once again, it's not very big, and Sabine is still very much a strong deck. It just hasn't been doing so well lately, and we'll see if this persists or not in the future. So, moving on now to the first list I want to talk about today, and this is the list of Mr. Hamburg, who won the Osnabrück PQ, in Germany, and running Boba Fett Yellow. So we talked about this deck last week. It's a deck that I've been personally I've played quite a bit. Because I was really convinced that it was, in my opinion, the best way to run Boba Data Vault. and it seems that all those recent tournament results are proving me right, because Boba Fett has now 2 PQ under its belt, and both of them are with a Data Vault variant. So why would you play Data Vault for Boba Fett? Basically, it gives you access to ramp, which is very, very valuable whenever you have a leader that deploys on 6, because it not only allows you to play larger units, it also allows you to deploy your leader faster, and Boba Fett is one of the most impactful leader deploy in the entire game. Huge amount of stat boost on a vehicle, making it very, very difficult to remove, and also has kind of a mini barrage entering battlefield effect. So getting that deployment early is very, very key to the deck. It's a deck that I think also you get access to overwhelming barrage, which is incredibly powerful in this particular deck. We play a lot of units very, very high with very high attack value. Boba Fett, once you get deployed on a unit, also gives you access to a very, very powerful barrage. And those reasons by themselves are enough to justify the green, because the yellow just doesn't offer a whole lot outside of just the old fire spray and the guerrilla soldiers. There's just much more going on in the green version. So this particular version is very much what you would expect now that we've kind of established the deck. The deck does a good job at being flexible depending on what your opponent does. If your opponent plays a lot of units, put the indirect damage on his base, you're going to try to play aggro and try to kill him as quickly as possible. If your opponent puts the indirect damage on its unit, you can take advantage of this by playing cards like Daring Raid, Grenade Strike, Open Fires, and Barrage. And there's obviously the good old late game with Devastators and Planetary Bombardment, which give the deck some good options even against the most controlly decks in the game. So the sideboard is very, very anti-control, as you can see. 2 Bravados, 2, I think Bravado is more of an anti-aggro card, to be fair, like to try to end the game even quicker whenever you get like a Boba deploy and you manage to stabilize. With Bravado can allow you to close out games very, very quickly, but the rest of the sideboard is very much anti-control. We have the Palpatine's Returns to combine with the Devastators. We got the Krayt Dragons, which are really, really powerful, and the Sham Syndulla for even more ramp. So this is a really cool deck, and not much to say, just very solid. I think the only major difference with my personal version of the deck is the fact that it runs OOM series officers in as a 2-drop, which I don't think we've been seeing. It's okay, I don't think it's particularly amazing. I think you could also play in this slot the Death Star Stormtrooper. So you can go like Death Star Stormtrooper and First Legion Stormtrooper opening, which double 1-drop opening can be really powerful if you can make it happen. But yeah, OM series gives you guaranteed damage, which is nice. Moving on now to another list from the same PQ. This one made a top 8 performance, and this is a deck we haven't talked at all on the channel. This is Kazuda Blue. So the most popular version of Kazuda are Kazuda Red and Kazuda Yellow. Yellow is a bit more tempo-y, has a bit more control, access to cunning. The red version has access to those very powerful buff spells such as Trench Run and Heroic Sacrifice that Kazuda can turn off the downside, so it's a much more aggressive, as you can expect from the aggression aspect. The blue version, however, has the benefit of playing very powerful units which we can turn off the downside, and that unit is the main reason to be playing the blue version of Kazuda Blue is Corporate Defense Shuttle. So it's a 3/5 for 2 that cannot attack at all, but it can turn off the downside, so it can operate like a regular unit. And then obviously a 3/5 for 2 in space is absolutely unheard of as far as how much stats. It's very, very difficult to kill. There's no possibility to ping plus target down it. It puts a significant amount of pressure, and you can of course be piloted by something like a Han Solo or a Mandalorian. This version also plays 1 copies of L337, 2 copies of Page Tycho, so lots of pilots in this particular version. So then it also plays another interesting card, which is the Qi'ra Cargo Frigate. So this card basically gets -1 attack for each damage on it, but then if you are obviously if you are turning off the downside with Kazuda, then it just becomes a 6/7 for 5, which is really good stats for 5-drop. And this is the kind of unit that puts a lot of pressure on the opponent when it comes out, even though it is a little bit slow. Then we'll play a couple of random cards, like Paige Taco is not terrible because she is an okay turn 1 play, and then she can be used as a pilot. We got Perilous Position, which is a pretty decent tempo cards. The blue aspect has always been very, very bad for aggro, but basically Corporate Defense Shuttle and Cargo Frigates are by themselves enough to kind of give some strong arguments in favor of this particular archetypes. So what can I say about this the blue version? In my opinion, the blue version is very it's promising more than it is good, in my opinion. I think that the deck is lacking a good reason to play blue. I don't think Corporate Defense Shuttle by itself is enough to be playing this deck. I think there's just more reason to be playing the red and the yellow version. If you just take this a purely accountant approach and you compare what the blue color gives you, and you compare it to what the red gives you, and you compare it to what the double yellow gives you, for me it is clear and far above that yellow and red provides more. I even seen some green version, which I have some arguments as well, with obviously Chewbacca being very particularly good in those pilot decks, Chewbacca's and Luke Skywalker being particularly good in those sort of pilot decks. So one is my problem with Corporate Defense Shuttle. I think it's a great card, and obviously you should play it. What is very awkward though, it's like you can't really use it, you can't really deploy your leader on it, because if you do, then obviously you can't attack anymore with Corporate Shuttle. And if you cannot attack, you cannot actually use Kazuda's ability. So that means that if Kazuda is deployed on a Corporate Shuttle, you're basically stuck with that unit that just can never attack. So that's something that you have to be very aware of whenever you are playing this. And it has a counter synergy here with the leader once he gets deployed. So you have to deploy Kazuda on another card, basically, on another unit, basically. So yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect for Kazuda deck, and yeah, it's nice to see this deck doing some result. I'm talking about this PQ because it has a triple digit. I think it had 100 participants, so top 8 in a 100-player tournament. That is significant. So congratulations to Lebo to be lucky. But the reason why I'm highlighting this deck is also because I think this deck is gonna get so much better with Legends of the Force. We know we've seen Obo Gobo going in. That is an amazing card for Kazuda. It's basically a 5/5 for 3 in a Kazuda deck, which is insane. It also has a couple of other cards that I forgot the name. Yeah, there's also the Lothwolf, which is a 3/3 for 2 Sentinels that can become a 3/3 for 2 with Kazuda. So in my opinion, there's a lot of interesting things going on with the Kazuda Blue is going to become a lot better in the new set. So it's going to be interesting if this deck managed to become a meta deck in the expansion. So moving on now to another top 8 list from the same PQ. This PQ had a lot of interesting lists to talk about. This one is the Vader Data Vault deck. There's a lot of people who are just big fans of the original Vader from Spark of Rebellion and want to be trying as many deck 6 as they want. And if for future Sector Qualifier, Regional Qualifier, they still provide the same rules where you get a showcase of the leader you perform with, this is still going to be a strong incentive for people to be playing that leader in those very, very large tournaments. So what do I think about this particular version? Well, the Vader Green is the very first deck that I've personally ever played. That I've ever played in terms of like competitively, I would say, and it's a deck that has a special place in my heart. Unfortunately, I don't think it's very well positioned in the current meta. I don't see any reason to be playing Vader Green over a Bosk Green. I think Bosk just provides way more utility, and has a lot more powerful synergies, deploys earlier, which is super essential to not just auto-lose to aggro. I think this deck kind of auto-loses to aggro. That's kind of like the problem whenever you run a deck like this. Unless you are a vastly better player than your opponent, you will almost always lose to aggro. You have a very late leader deploy. You don't have a lot of ways to stall the game. You don't have a lot of ways to heal. So it's a problem. This particular version has a couple of interesting choices. It does play 2 copies of No Disintegration, which allows in combination with Vader's ability to kill units of any size. Unfortunately, that doesn't work on leader, and having to spend 2 action to kill a unit can be really, really bad, because it means you cannot just kill a unit as first action and prevent him from attacking you. You are most likely going to be killing a unit that is already exhausted. So the value of the card just becomes a lot worse, but I guess it's something that is nice to have. Because you're running a 33 HP, you're running Data Vault, you have to kind of dig deeper in the card pool to find good card to play. There's a couple of choices that I'm extremely skeptical about. The first is the only 2 copies of Barrage in the main deck. I think Barrage is the brain and butter of those type of decks. So especially as you run a 60 card deck, I don't know how in the world you will only play 2. So maybe the author of this deck will be able to answer that video and tell me why there is only 2 Barrage in this list. Then the other choice that I'm really skeptical about is the Count Dooku over a Palpatine. So yes, Count Dooku using Explode can be played earlier than Palpatine, but the cost of having to defeat your own units in order to deal damage is a massive one, to say the least. And not only that, but it does need some extra units to come into play, while Palpatine can just do what it's supposed to do on its own. So personally, I find to be Palpatine just a far better card, especially in combination with Palpatine's Returns, which our friend Goat is playing 2 copies of in the main deck. There's also the special Force TIE Fighters, which it seems has been played in this deck. It's very difficult to get the ability to turn on unless you're playing against Vader 4 Swarm deck. So I'm not super entirely sure how good this is. In a lot of cases, it's going to be a 2-3 for 2 in space. I guess this gives us more chances to be able to hit with his Vader pilots on turn 2 on a piloted unit, I guess. But yeah, not super excited about some of those deck choices. The sideboard makes a lot more sense though. We got the Bombing Run for the Vader 4, the Confiscate for people who like to play upgrades, Escort Frigate for people who like to play 3/4 in space, so those hand decks notably. And then we got a Krayt Dragon, and then more late game Krayt Dragon, more Paps. Okay, so yeah, not a big fan of the deck personally, but it's nice to see Vader 1 doing some results in major tournaments, and it's nice that there's options for people who really like their leaders to be able to play him and be successful at a competitive level. Moving on, we got Dark, who won with his hand 2, a very large PQ, so I wanted to highlight his deck. His hand blue has recently been very much more popular. As I said at the beginning of this video, the ban of Django and means that there's a lot lesser Tarkin towns roaming around, makes hand 2 a lot more playable. I also think that there are more ways to play around Tarkin Town in set 4 than there used to be. If you're playing the green version, you can go Port Amron pilots on turn 2 and get a 4/5 in space that is not damaged. If you're playing the blue version, you can run 3 copies of Outer Rim Outlaws, which will not die to Tarkin Town unless it is combined with the ping, but because it's a 3-drop, you cannot ping this on turn 1 unless you're playing a 3-drop, which you won't be able to. So Outer Rim Outlaws has made it a lot easier to play around Tarkin Town. So not only I think there's fewer Tarkin Town decks in the meta, I also think that the new versions of hands are doing a better job at playing around it as well. So that I think goes a long way in justifying the success of the deck. This is a pretty classic version. It runs a 3 Sham Syndulla in the main, probably to help against Qi'ra. We see the 2 Phantom 2, which is now a standard in every single hand blue list, as a 2 of or as a 3 of. We saw Rebellion's Hammerhead, which I think is a card that was just waiting to be played somewhere, because I think it's a really good card. It has really good stats, immediate impact on the game, and often can deal a lot of damage. And the fact that you can play it 1 turn earlier with Anne as a 5/5 is very, very good. So yeah, no, there's a lot of good stuff to say about this list. It's a pretty classic version of the deck, but very effective, so no wonder why it did well with it. Um, Moving on, we got a Quinlan of Beerstin. Once again, highlighting this deck because he did really well at the Atomic Empire PQ, which was a very large triple-digit PQ. So this is again a very very classic version of the deck. I think the only kind of things that we don't not used to see so much is the 3 copies of R2D2 full of solutions in the main deck. It's a card that seems to be replacing the Crafty Smuggler. It is undeniably worse against other Tarkin Town deck than Crafty Smuggler, but once again, if you're expecting fewer Tarkin Town decks, then a 2/4 that also has this entering battlefield effect can be sometimes more beneficial. So yeah, pretty cool deck, pretty classic, and it's been working very well for him. Moving on now to another list. So this one, I don't even have the name of the guy. He's a guy who also won a triple-digit PQ event, and he was running Vader Yellow. So his version is pretty classic. There's a couple of things that I think are interesting. Only 2 copies of Surprise Strike. I think is surprising. Surprise Strike, in my opinion, is a note to include in any aggro deck that plays yellow. In this case, he only plays 2 of it, which is surprising to me. And he also plays only 2 copies of Barrage, which I think is a very, very solid way to stabilize the game whenever you manage to land like a big Cloud Combat Squadrons or even play like a Vader. When you deploy Vader, it's very, very strong to be able to barrage and completely reset the opponent board, especially when you're in sort of a racing situation, which does happen quite often with this deck because you are playing exclusively in space. So almost exclusively in space. So yeah, other than this, the deck is pretty much what we've been playing against for the last months, and seems to be holding strong despite. I still think that the deck can have some auto lose matchup against specific cards, but the thing is, not everybody plays those cards, and not everybody is going to draw those cards. So it's also something that the deck can still do well even in those situations. And they're the kind of card that once again, whenever you get countered by a card that nobody naturally plays in this deck, it's always a good position to be in because you know that people are going to have to make some significant effort in their sideboards to be able to answer those. Moving on, I just wanted to let you know that you could pick up Krayt Dragon currently, which I think is a very played card in the current meta, for 16 euros. I think Krayt Dragon sees more play than Podamron in today's meta, which is only justice. I'm joking. No, I just say that because back in set 2, I really thought Krayt Dragon was going to be the most expensive card of the set, and it took a while, but I think it's more or less the case now. Anyway, moving on now to the results of the the tournament organized by OPE at the UK Game Expo. So I had the privilege to be able to cast this event, and it was a lot of fun. If you want to watch the replays, I put the link in the video. I think the videos of the first day are not on YouTube, but we have the result for the second day and for the top 16, and so go check it out if you don't want to be spoiled. This is honestly was a really fun tournament because the meta is obviously in an incredible shape, but also a lot of people brought some very interesting decks, and it was very high level because most of the best players in the UK took part in the event, so it was really nice to watch. So but let's talk a little bit about the results. So the way it works is like you got 2 days, you got a Friday, you got a Saturday, so which were 2 independent tournaments, so you could take part in both of the days, and then if you manage to make top 8 to one of those 2 days, you will basically be playing the top 16 on on Sunday. So this gives you basically, so the cut to make it to top 8 was very rough. You had to be, I think, 6-1 in order to be a guaranteed top 8, which is not easy, especially when the meta is where there's so many good players playing. So it was very, very challenging to do this. But the good news is that you had two opportunities to do it. You could do it on day one, and if you couldn't make it on day one, you could make it on day two. So this is the result of the first day. David Holland with Anne Data Vault won the day one and was undefeated. And there's a lot of interesting decks. There were a Boba 4 Data Vault once again making it a top 8, and some pretty cool deck with notably John Branford and his Luke Skywalker Attack in Town, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And we also had a Quinlan Blue, which is nice. And yeah, moving on to the second day, this was even more of a surprise. We even have wilder decks making it top 8 here. We had the Yoda Green of Michael of Michael. We got the Obi-Wan Post City, the making it top 8 as well. We got a Piet Red from Martin White. And we had, of course, the Ackbar Data Vault of Big Annotation. Big Annotation already had his top 8 tickets from the previous day running Han Data Vault. So it's like, on day 2, I'm going to be running a deck. I'm going to be running a deck that I enjoy playing. And even though I think it's worse than Han Data Vault. And he did an even better result with his Ackbar. He was undefeated with the Ackbar Data Vault. He's the second player who managed to make a major performance with this deck, showing us that Ackbar is not a fluke. He's a strong deck, especially for people who don't expect it. I'll go a little bit more details on what I think the strengths and the weaknesses of the decks are, and which circumstances I think you should be bringing it. But big congratulations to him for a double top 8 position, and yeah, it was just a really, really cool deck. Moving on to the top 16. So this was the overall top 16. And as you can see, it's very, very diverse. We got 8 slots and we got 7 different leaders. And even the 2 leaders that managed to make top 8 were playing a radically different version. One was playing the blue, the other one was playing the green. So this is the top 8 of the final day. And the won by none other than obviously Qi'ra. Qi'ra actually struggled a little bit in the qualification part of the event. He didn't manage to make top 8 on day 1 with a 5-2 record, and on the second day he was honestly very, very close to not making it to top cut as well. But then once he managed to make the top 16, he rode throughout this top 16 very well, giving himself another win on a major tournament, confirming his status as being the best players in the UK. So let's take a look, of course, of the different lists that we saw during this event. Obviously, I have to start with Big Annotation Ackbar Data Vault. This deck is a very, very interesting. So the first time I saw this deck was obviously last week with the performance of I forgot the name of the player. I'm so sorry. But he brought this deck to the table. He's undeniably the creator of the deck. Big Annotation, I think, pretty much just took his list and made maybe a couple of changes. But now I have now that I saw this deck in action, I have a much better idea on what this deck is all about. So this is a deck that is obviously all trying to swarm the board with a lot of very high health unit that can be sometimes very difficult to kill, and try to use Ackbar to generate value every single turn. So Ackbar's ability is actually very powerful. To spend 1 resource to put a 2/2 into play, having to exhaust your own units normally is a really annoying thing to do, but in this deck you do play quite a few units with high health that you don't really care about too much, don't really care about attacking with them so much. You got like R2-D2 full of solution, you got Grogu, which is a 0/5, you got the Delegate, which is a 1/5, or even you have like small units like Leia, or those units you really don't care too much if they get exhausted. They don't really care too much if you're attacking with them. And then basically when that is the case, you can just produce a 2/2 in space for 1, which is a really, really good rate. Sometimes you can use it against enemy units, but 90% of the time you're going to be using to generate more tokens. and it kind of creates this deck which completely just grows out of control. And then there's loads of cards that just benefit from having a lot of units on the board. You got the Resistance Blue Squadrons, which is kind of an Ackbar in space. You got the Sanctioner Shuttle, which is one of the best coordinate card in the game. This 2/3 that just capture the units when it comes into play. And you got, of course, the Plo Koon. You got the Coruscant Guard. So the deck is just all about swarming the board with tokens and then just completely overwhelming you. And then also some really powerful late game options. So another really cool tech about the deck is the fact that it runs 3 copies of Wedge Anti-Air, and it combines Wedge. So something I didn't know when I first saw the deck list was that Wedge actually works on token, and I literally didn't know about this. And this is such an incredible, powerful tools, because once Wedge is in play, you're basically playing a timely reinforcement, and then you are basically generating 3, 4, sometimes even 5 2/2 tokens that becomes 3/3 ambush tokens, which is incredibly backbreaking versus something like a Vader 4 or things like this. So this is really powerful. But even just without timely reinforcement, just using Ackbar's, just paying 1, generating a 3/3 ambush is so much stronger than just getting a 2/2 token. So Wedge Anti-Air basically turns Admiral Ackbar's ability into a complete powerhouse. So this is obviously a very, very powerful combo. You do have to spend an entire turn playing that Wedge and having no immediate impact on the game, but it still remains, in my opinion, a very, very powerful synergy. So it's just a really, really cool deck. It's a really, really cool swarmy deck, which I think has a lot of assets. So basically, I think it's a deck that if you're not capable of keeping up of killing units, you are gonna put yourself you're gonna put yourself in a very bad position. The deck has loads of ambush, loads of there's ways to heal with those Sundar Peacekeeper with Oman, loads of which to produce value and draw cards. So it's if you let the deck just go out of control, it can be very problematic. However, where the deck becomes a lot worse is if you manage to actually clean the board, then the deck can really, really struggle, because then if there's no unit in play, you can't even use Ackbar's ability. So my opinion is that it's a deck that snowballs really, really hard whenever it's doing well, but whenever it gets countered, it can snowball on the other side and do really poorly. So it's kind of like, it has kind of this double aspect where it either win hard or loses hard. Is sort of my impression looking how the deck sees play. I also think that it's a deck that a lot of people don't know how to play against. So it has this benefit, of course, of people don't know how to play against, so it just does really well because people just don't know how to handle those type of decks. It is always, of course, one of the advantage of running a deck that is kind of out of people don't have a lot of practice against. Moving on, there's another deck that's branded this tournament. Was the Luke Tarkintown deck from John Bamford. And this is a deck that a lot of people tried early on in Jump to Lightspeed. A lot of people tried this deck and try to make it work to no real benefit. Like, this deck was just not really doing so well. But in this tournament in particular, it did really well. And I think that the build that John was running was really, really good. So I don't know if this deck is truly gonna be like a tier meta deck. I honestly don't think so. But if you want to be playing this deck, this is probably the best way to go about it. So the premise of the deck is it's an aggressive space deck that tries to use Luke and Tarkintown's ability to give himself a very good early lead. So the idea, of course, is you play space unit first. You attack with that fighter unit, you get to use the ping looks for free, and then just use Tarkintown to get rid of it, and this allows you to get yourself an early lead, and then you just have to overwhelm your opponent with space units and just take over the game. Obviously, Red 5 is incredible in combination with Luke Skywalker, so is Red Squadron X-Wing, so the deck does have a couple of pieces of interactions. It can finish off units using Daring Raid, and even plays 3 copies of Hotshot Maneuver to deal additional damage. So Hotshot Maneuver in this deck is pretty much just a Daring Raid that allows you to attack at the same time. It requires you to have a unit you play that has a horn attack ability, which this deck has plenty of, even though not all of them are. And you can even get a double damage if you get to self. Luke Skywalker also has a one on attack ability, so if you get to deploy Luke on a space unit has an on attack ability, you can actually deal 4 damage with Hotshot Maneuver. So Hotshot Maneuver is basically kind of a worse, more situational version of Daring Raid, but if there's one deck in the game that can run it, it has to be this one. The deck has lots of ways to ready units with Cogdan turn, and aggression, and which combine of course very well with the one attack abilities. So there's a lot of very sweet synergies. They also harm to the teeth, which can also provide an additional on attack ability. So you can play harm to the teeth, deploy Luke, then you get 3 on attack ability, and then suddenly your hotshot maneuver deals 6 damage. But there's just like a lot of really cool synergies. You're also playing aggression, which is incredible in this deck. The deck also runs Relentless Fire Spray, which I really like in this deck. I mean, it's not so easy to kill because it's 4/6. Doesn't die to fell the dragon, doesn't die to take down, and if you manage to deploy Luke Skywalker on it, then Luke can basically attack twice per turn, using his on attack ability twice per turn, and then good luck getting rid of an 11 health unit that cannot that is a pilot. And also keep in mind that Luke Skywalker as a pilot cannot be defeated by upgrade removals, which is really nice. So it's just a really well built deck. The Grey Squadron Y-Wing also being played alongside the Grey Squadron Y-Wing. So this obviously combines with Luke's ability, combines really well with Luke ability, because you want to deal damage to your own unit that can finish off those units using Luke Skywalker. So yeah, it's just a really awesome deck, and it's nice to see doing well. So in the sideboard, we got the Wolf anti-heal, we got some more anti-upgrade with the Fang Fighters, we got the Chaos of War against control decks, and the Shoot Down against other space decks. So another a very well built sideboard as well. Yeah, it's just a really sweet deck, and in my opinion, it might be the best. It might be just the best double red deck in the game, and it also is the first time that I'm genuinely impressed by a double red deck since Star Wars Limited came out. Okay, moving on, this is the list that David Hoyland was running. This is a version of Han Data Vault, which is specifically built, I think, to beat Qi'ra, because you're running the 3 Cat Banes in the main deck, the Sham Syndulla in the main deck, and 2 Fel the Dragon in the main, out of aspect. So it's kind of cool, and also the all packages, all 3 Crate Dragons in the package here. So in my opinion, one of the biggest buffs of this deck with Jump to Light Speed is obviously the inclusion of Poe Dameron. Every single Han green deck, whether it's the Han ECL or Han Daredevil, should be running 3 copies of this card. It's incredible, and it's a very effective way to kind of play around the ping plus Tack in Town, because you're getting a 4/5 unit that on turn 3 that doesn't die to that doesn't get damaged. So it's just really flexible. It's just a really solid deck. I think we've seen this deck before. An interesting thing as well is that he's running heavy. So heavy has been just a really solid card for those type of decks. Just an attacks on 6. You can play this as early as turn 3, and it's the fact that you can play it 1 turn earlier is a really big deal, because it can kind of swing on 6 with Raid 2, and if you kill it, it's still gonna have his when defeated ability, which can be really annoying. So I think Heavy as just being a very overlooked card for a lot of those type of Han Solo mid-range decks, and yeah, the rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. And he also plays a couple of Carabas, which is always nice to see in a hand deck as you damage your own unit. This is pretty much just a deal 3 for 2. The deck is also very well prepared against Vader 4. You have in the sideboard, you get 3 copies of Bombing Run. 3 copies of Bombing Run in the sideboard to deal with the type of decks, which is really cool as well. Moving on, we got the list of this one was the list of Michael who's running is Yoda green deck. We saw this deck winning a PQ last week, and this time it was so that was he didn't so he did top eight with this, but he didn't decide to play this deck in top eight because he also basically top eight with Quinlan as well, and he decided to play the top 16 with the Quinlan. But it was very nice to see him doing a top eight performance on day two with this deck. Yeah, finally I wanted to talk about, of course, this Obi-Wan Posity that makes it to top 8. It did lose in top 16. This was very interesting. So normally double blue decks are mostly built sort of as kind of like control decks. This was not a control deck. This was really much a mid-range deck. Barely any late game. Just literally the Xylo Beast. And the idea of this deck is to try to kind of put some, and he's not really playing that many upgrades either. I mean, just literally playing the Electro Staff for Obi-Wan. He also runs the Pulse City. So the idea of this deck is to try to get an Obi-Wan. Is kind of like reminds me of a Qi'ra deck to some extent, where you basically get to deploy with the Obi-Wan, then you put some extra stuff on Obi-Wan. You try to keep Obi-Wan alive by using Covenant Strength, Midnight Repairs, put some shield on it with the Vigilance, of course. It's a deck that is capable of dealing an absurd amount of card advantage with Kuel on turn 1. It has a lot of really cool synergy. It is pretty much the double blue deck that you know and love, with a heavy emphasis on Obi-Wan. The reason why I'm not a big fan of Pulse City as a base in general, but in this particular deck it made a lot of sense for multiple reasons. The first one is that this deck has an absurd amount of healing, so it doesn't really mind too much of being a low HP base because he can just heal so much whenever he takes damage. And the +1 defense on Obi-Wan actually makes a pretty big difference in the numbers of matchups, so it made sense. The only thing that was a bit shocking to me on this deck list was the only 2 copies of Luke Skywalker in the main. I don't know why he's only running 2 Luke in the main. He's running the 3rd one in the sideboard, so you can't even say that's a budget thing. So that's really shocking to me. Also, I was surprised to not see the Village Protector in the main. It's such a strong card in my opinion as well. But yeah, it's a cool deck, and it was very well piloted. It was really fun to see it in action. Of course, last but not least, I need to talk about the specific version that Ysera was running for his Qi'ra Daredevil deck. So basically, uh, um, basically what I can say about this particular deck is that you are running. So obviously it's a Ysera deck, so it was not going to be the same as the standard Qi'ra. There's no way Ysera would just play what everybody else is playing. He was going to be doing his own spin on the version, and as you can expect from Ysera, he's definitely kind of going for the value plan again, emphasizing on the value plan with the 2 copies of Patrolling V-Wing, which is a card that he loves. Getting, of course, 3 Long Pikes Smuggle in it, and then some obviously this full package of Vaders, and try to get the value engine going alongside everything else that the deck is known for. So for the Long Pike, I think it's pretty much just Ysera being Ysera and wanting to never run out of gas under any circumstance and always have some multiple options available to him. I find the smuggle of Long Pike to be very, very beneficial in notably against Quinlan, and this is why I actually played a couple of Long Pike in my own version of the deck. But something I disliked about it is that the stat line, the 4/6 stat line, is just really bad in the current meta. 4/6 on the ground doesn't do a whole lot most of the time, which is a bit awkward. Another interesting thing is like he's running the TIE Dagger Vanguard instead of the Death Trooper. So TIE Dagger Vanguard has the advantage of working against any unit, not only ground units. And he basically has had that preference here over the Death Trooper. Another interesting thing is also the 3 copies of Count Dooku. So Count Dooku is undeniably a worse card than Vader's and Maul, but Qi'ra is a really good observer of the meta, and he's always capable of making changes to his deck list depending on what he observes other players are running. And his observation is that space is very important right now. The between the An2 and the Vader 4 and the An1 being playing a lot of space as well. He thinks that Count Dooku and having an option to kill space unit. One of the problems with Vaders and Maul is like they are a little bit kind of similar cards. They are large ambush units on the ground, and so sometimes it is worth it to be running a card that you think that is worse, but is going to be complementing your package a bit better. So sometimes the flexibility of having a card that does something that the other cards don't do is more important than the raw power. So even though Count Dooku is arguably worse than Vader and Maul, the fact that he can interact with the space arena is very valuable in a number of matchups. And this is my main explanation on why he's running the Count Dooku over the Qi'ra. Also, it also gives him more blue unit, which makes his cargo juggernaut more consistent, I guess. Since he was playing like quite a few blue units, maybe I would have thought maybe Charleston could have been a good inclusion to this deck. But yeah, overall, of course, the rest of the deck is what you know and love from Qi'ra, and that's what he was playing. And this is to wrap up this video. I just want to take a look, of course, once again, as I do every week, at the evolution of the highest performing. This statistic here takes into account every tournament that has been played, so it's not only the PQs, it includes every single tournament that has been played, and it includes the UK Game Expo and stuff like this, and obviously after the ban of Django, so it's the post Django meta breakdown. And as you can see, week after week, the top deck percentage is going down. We are seeing I think last week it was at 13% of base plus leader combination. It was at 30.3% of overall leader. And same for Sabine. Sabine was also kind of around 11.5%, and now it's at 10.7%. So you're seeing that even the best decks in the meta are kind of slowly kind of going down and equalizing. And we are approaching the 10% kind of thing. So this is so once again, for people saying that Qi'ra is the best deck in the meta, yes, it is true, but once again, only 12.8% of the top 8 result. This is not a domination by any means. There are certain decks in previous sets that were not the best deck in the meta that had those kind of percentage. So it just means that the meta is just once again incredibly diverse, and it's obviously really cool to see that. So yeah, I'm still in love with this meta. I still think it's a great and fun meta to play in. But obviously, doesn't matter how good a meta is. At some point, we want things to change. We want to move on to a new era of Star Wars Unlimited, and even though there's a lot of new decks, the majority of the deck that C plays still are just basically variants of existing we've known for a while. And obviously I'm excited to see what Legend of the Force is going to bring to the table on that particular regard. So that's going to be really cool. So yeah, no major evolution on the meta. We're just seeing Sabine a little bit, seeing a little bit less play here. Quinlan's coming back a little bit. Vader 4 still continuing its progress, but yeah, overall there's no major evolution, and I don't think there's going to be any major evolution since the end of the set, but it's still amazing. And thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.